All right, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Okino Morgan, and I'm from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and I will be presenting on my research, linguistics in linguistic discrimination in Jamaica's public health communication. And the period under investigation is 1962, which is the year Jamaica gained independence from Britain, through to 2020, which is when we saw the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so in the presentation, I want to look at Jamaica as a linguistic space. I want to speak briefly to linguistic discrimination as well as health communication, to also point out the significance of the study, the methodology that I'm using to collect my data, and also look at some of the preliminary findings from the study or from the pilot project, which looked at communication in the COVID-19 campaigns. All right, so when we describe Jamaica as a linguistic space, there are many labels that we can use. However, for my research, I'm looking at Jamaica as being a diglossic speech community. Now, diglossia was first proposed by Ferguson in 1959, and in essence, what diglossia model is that it is saying that there are two languages coexisting in a speech community. And within that speech community, there is one language that is deemed as high language and not the other being regarded as low language. And we see that in the Jamaican linguistic space where there is the presence of Jamaican Standard English, JSE, and also the presence of Jamaican Creole, JC. Now, there have been different variations of diglossia since its inception. So Fishman developed what we call the leaking diglossia in 1980. And in essence, what the leaking diglossia speaks of is that within the speech community, it's not as hard and fast as what Ferguson proposed. So while a particular domain might be restricted for a particular language usage, you will find that there are occasional overlaps. And we also see that in Jamaica. So in our linguistic space, you see where institutions like the church, schools, politics, and businesses, English is the language that is reserved for those institutions, while Jamaican Creole is used more in a family setting within your communities, in the arts, in dancehall music, which you heard a presentation on earlier this morning. But what you find is that in these domains, there are overlaps. So you will find Jamaican Creole creeping into religious institutions. You will find it in our educational institutions and vice versa as it relates to English being used in other settings that are traditionally reserved for Jamaican Creole. And then Professor Hubert Devonish developed what we call the conquest diglossia. And in essence, what conquest diglossia is, it's really saying that in our linguistic space, the language that is deemed as the high language is the language that we imported from our colonizers. And in the case of Jamaica, English from Britain, right? While the language that we regarded as our low language is a language which really was birthed out of the sufferings of the enslaved people who came to work on plantations here. So moving on to discrimination. Now, according to the United Nations, discrimination is any act or conduct which denies certain individuals equality of treatment with other individuals. And this is not only as it relates to language, but in every sphere of life, right? So that's what discrimination is. And using this definition from the United Nations, we're able to develop a definition for linguistic discrimination. Now, Dr. Walters in 2016 in her paper defined linguistic discrimination as treating an individual differently and unfairly solely because of his or her language use. So when we talk about linguistic discrimination, we're talking about treating an individual differently because of the language choice that they may make or how they choose to use language. Now, it's very important for us to point out here that when we speak to linguistic discrimination, for us to understand that linguistic discrimination can be both direct and indirect. Now, direct linguistic discrimination is where you outrightly treat the person unfairly because of their language choice, while indirect linguistic discrimination is you may provide the individual with a particular service, but how you make the individual feel while providing that service is where the discrimination comes into play. Now, onto the whole matter of health communication. Now, health communication originated in the 18th and 19th century, right? And it originally came about to promote hygiene and immunization. And immunization is a big deal across the world now. And there is greater need for development in health communication in order for us to fully come out of the pandemic, right? Now, when we talk about health communication, we're saying that it is the art and the technique of informing, influencing, and motivating individuals and public audiences about important issues surrounding health, right? And factors such as World War II and other health campaigns really help to propel health communication to what we have today. Now, in theory, the government of Jamaica has committed in their communication policy to provide the Jamaican population with timely, accurate, clear, objective, and complete information about its policies, programs, services, and initiatives. Now, it's very important that we make note of words coming out of the government's policies, such as accurate, clear, objective, and complete information if we are supposed to fully understand what we're talking about when we talk about indirect linguistic discrimination. And the Ministry of Health and Wellness, which is the primary government agency that is responsible for public health in Jamaica, also pointed out that they see themselves as providing a health system or creating a health system that is client-centered and one that guarantees access to quality healthcare for every person in our population. It is one in which they seek to provide information and to educate the population to facilitate individuals taking responsibility for their own health, and so that the individuals can make informed decisions. Again, looking at these government policies, it's very important for us to pick up on keywords such as providing information and educating the population, right? So that's the theory coming out of government policies here. And when we assess the government policies, both from the Office of the Prime Minister and from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we see where it seems pretty good, right? Jamaica is a signatory to the World Health Organization multilingual policy, which ensures that health information reaches the people who need it in the language that they can understand, so that they may access health information more equitable and effectively, right? So in theory, Jamaica seems to be upholding the tenets of the World Health Organization multilingual policy. However, the government, in its own admission in the same communication policy document from 2016, pointed out that the communication needs of the diverse Jamaican population is not consistently taken into account with respect to accommodating the use of the Jamaican language. And when we talk about the Jamaican language here, we're talking specifically to Jamaican Creole and cultural expressions in certain official communication activities. Now, this is the government saying that they're not providing the information in the Jamaican language, right? Now, remember a couple of slides earlier, they said that they are committed to providing this information to the population. So this admission by the government poses a risk for effective health literacy in the field of public health. So the government policy of offering services in English may be interpreted as a form of indirect linguistic discrimination. And we're interpreting it in this particular way because monolingual Jamaican speakers are automatically excluded from accessing services offered in Jamaican Standard English. Now, let me point out here that data coming from the 2005 Language Attitude Survey in Jamaica recognized or labeled only 17% of the Jamaican population as being monolingual English speakers. 36% of the population are monolingual Creole speakers, and only 46% of the population is what we regard as being bilingual. So the government providing information to the public in English only is excluding 36% of the Jamaican population, right? And this form of indirect linguistic discrimination has a great implication for public health. And you can think about it, and for the Jamaicans who are online over the last 2 years, the implication that it would have had with a pandemic. So the aim of my study is really to identify areas of linguistic discrimination in our health communication. And it's not only in regards to health campaigns, but it also relates to signage in our health facilities and even doctor-patient conversations, right? Well, and the aim is that by the end of the study, I'll be able to propose a model for public health communication that is effective for action, not only here in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean, where there are also other diagnostic speech communities. Right, so my research questions are: how have Jamaican Standard English and Jamaican Creole been used in health campaigns since independence? Have Jamaicans been able to fully understand the messages that have been communicated in our local health campaigns? What are the implications for these language choices in our health campaigns? And how should the government incorporate Jamaican Creole in our health promotion campaigns going forward? Now, in 2020, we did a language use in Jamaica during the COVID pandemic survey as a sort of precursor to the bigger study. And coming out of that pilot project, we see 57.6% of the population reporting that they believe that Jamaicans did not understand certain terms that were used in the health campaigns coming out of COVID. 45.5% believe that the government would have communicated better with the population if they had chosen to communicate in Jamaican Creole, and 33.1% believe that public compliance in terms of adhering to curfew and COVID-19 protocols would have been greater if the orders were given in Jamaican Creole. Now, the findings of that pilot project is not surprising to us, because the language attitude survey, which was done by the Jamaica Language Unit in 2005, pointed to the fact that 67.8% of the Jamaican population at the time believed that government would be communicating better if they used Jamaican Creole. So we see where the population is buying into the usage of Jamaican Creole in domains which would have been traditionally reserved for Jamaican Standard English. Looking at the health campaigns, we see that government would traditionally use short phrases in Jamaican Creole to grab the attention of the masses. But then what we find is that in these campaigns, they would quickly revert to Jamaican Standard English to communicate the core of the message. So if you look at the flyer that is on screen, you would see the flyer saying COVID a key, right? That's Jamaican Creole. However, the content of the campaign: wash your hands, wear your mask in public spaces, maintain 6 feet distances, and abide by quarantine restrictions, that is in Standard English and not in Jamaican Creole. So while they grab the attention of the monolingual Creole speaker, the real content that they want to communicate is communicated in English, thus excluding monolingual speakers. All right, we also see a tweet here from the Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, who is our Minister of Health and the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. In his tweet, this was made in 2020, we need you to hashtag stay at home. If you don't need to go on the road, hashtag tana your yard. If you don't need to visit someone, hashtag keep your distance. And if you don't need to be around people, even family, hashtag check for yourself. Be a hero. Stay at home. Hashtag Jamaica COVID-19, hashtag give me like a space. So here we see the Minister of Health communicating with the population. The core of his message about staying at home, maintaining social distancing, and so on is communicated in English. However, he will use Jamaican Creole in his hashtags to grab the attention, or to what they call it on Twitter, to become trending on Twitter. right? But again, we see monolingual Creole speakers being excluded from the conversation that is being held surrounding public health.
5 minutes of presentation time left, okay?
Thank you. All right, so what I want to show you here is I want to show you two videos also published by the Ministry of Health, and then I'm going to provide a brief analysis of how Jamaican Creole is used in both videos. Hello? Are you able to hear?
Yes.
I heard something.
Okay.
Some we have all sorts of.
Hello? 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 Yeah, you. Hold on, and a pandemic winner. You now wear a mask, you now wash your hand, and you now keep the required 6 feet distancing from other people. And what could I really cause you? You need to stop it. That no mask, no wash, and no distance something there, nah keep. You know what keep? COVID-19. Yeah, it not gone nowhere. COVID-19, they are same way. So here what you are going to do for all of we. Wear your mask, wash or sanitize your hands pan a regular, and yeah, keep your distance, please. And thanks.
Some we have all sorts of excuse as to why we don't want to wear the mask. The place too hot. We're not used to it. It's not comfortable. Look, you know. Wake up and smell the country chocolate. Them excuse they're not gonna make it. Yeah, me know the place hot. But you don't want to feel COVID-19 fire in your lungs. And used to. The only way to get used to a thing is with practice. So practice and wear the mask.
All right, so looking at those two ads, what we see is that, yes, the government of Jamaica is using more Jamaican Creole in their health communication campaigns, and we commend that. But that doesn't fix the issue, because what we find is that when Jamaican Creole is used in these campaigns, they are used more for dramatization. They're used for scolding. So you will notice that in both ads, the presenters came across very aggressive. And in other campaigns or other advertisements, you see where they come across as if they are mocking people, right? And that plays into the traditional notion that Jamaican Creole is a backward language reserved for the home and for the zinc fences and so on. So we're saying when you're using Jamaican Creole in your campaigns, use it as if you were using Jamaican Standard English, because you are able to do that with the language. So what next, as it relates to the study? I am in the process of collecting health campaigns, again from 1962 to 2020 from the National Library, the Gleaner, which is our largest newspaper here, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness Library. Key terms are being identified for testing. The terms will be grouped based on their syllabicity, whether they are medical or non-medical, and the length. They will be ranked, and the most problematic ones will be used to test comprehension using stratified random sampling. The questionnaire will be a bilingual questionnaire, so it will be distributed in both Jamaican Creole and Standard Jamaican English, collecting both demographic information as well as testing the comprehension of the population for the words that are being tested. And a language analysis of the campaigns will also be done to test for the use of Jamaican Creole in these publications and to test for the effectiveness.
1 minute.
All right, and some of the terms are on-screen: vaccinate, conjunctivitis, immunocompromise, vasectomy, sterilization. So those are some of the terms that will be tested on the questionnaire. The hope is that after completing the study, we'll be able to influence practice in terms of what is coming out of the Ministry of Health and Wellness Communication Department, influence policy, ultimately getting Jamaican Creole official language status alongside Jamaican Standard English, and to also influence theory. There's not much as it relates to health communication in the Caribbean and in a diagnostic speech community in our region. So the hope is to influence both practice, policy, and theory. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you, or in Jamaican Creole, mitankuno.
Thank you very much indeed. And what perfect timing. So 5 minutes of some Q&A.
Okay, let me start it
You want to
off.
start? Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aquino. Lovely to have you, and it's very, very important work. I'd like to ask very quickly, okay, so there's a conundrum because there's this need to target linguistic discrimination, especially indirectly. I'm wondering, how do you reconcile the fact that moves which prioritize and promote Jamaican Creole are seen by the very same population that you're trying to reduce discrimination for as backward, and we don't want Jamaican Creole, and people who speak Jamaican Creole are not educated, although, you know, there's this important need. You know, as well as I do, if not better, that the efforts to get Jamaican Creole official have always been met with staunch opposition, largely from the population. How do you reconcile all of this with the very important work that you're doing?
All right, thanks very much, Andre. So yes, it's very important work being done. We are encouraged, or I am encouraged from the fact that increasingly there are more and more Jamaicans buying into the idea that Jamaican Creole is a language equal to Jamaican Standard English. So I am encouraged by that. And again, it goes back to ideologies. So we have to now go out there and we have to educate the population, educate those persons who are still not so convinced as it relates to the role of Jamaican Creole in the society and in places like health and education and so on. And regardless of what is being purported in some circles that Jamaican Creole is not good enough, I don't think we should necessarily focus or be discouraged by that, because it's still early days. We're just, what, 60 years independence? So we're still a pretty young nation, still trying to form our ideas and our identities. So, you know, we as linguists just have to keep out there on the battlefield and keep advocating for what we know to be right and to be true.
Okay, thank you very much, Aquino.
Thanks, Aquino. I think maybe this, what you've just said, may be related to Dr. Key's question that she's just put in the chat box. I'm not sure if you can see it. Right. Maddie, do you want to speak?
All right, so does political ideology impact public health communication policy and language choice in Jamaica? It certainly does. Politics and language is intertwined, especially in the Jamaican context where we're coming out of colonization. And there is still that ongoing debate as to who we are as a people, finding that Jamaican identity. The truth is that there are some politicians who individually recognize Jamaican Creole as a language. So I can say, for example, Mark Golding, Olivia Babsy Grange, Alnaldo Terrelong, they have come out publicly and have spoken to the fact that Jamaican Creole is a language and it should be recognized. And these are political representatives from both major political parties here in Jamaica. But to make that ultimate decision and to say, okay, let us legislate this, let us put it in law, let us recognize Jamaican Creole as an official language, is not necessarily politically profitable. So neither person from or individuals from the respective political parties haven't been able to push that in terms of legislation. So it most certainly does.
Okay, well, I think my clock and Andre's are a little bit misaligned. I think it's done, but yeah, maybe we could have one final quick question.
Hi, may I ask a
Please,
question?
yeah, very quickly, if you don't mind.
Okay, so it looks like that when the ministers use Jamaican Creole, they are mixing Jamaican Creole with Jamaican Standard English. Like, is there any move to use pure Jamaican Creole in their speech or in the communication?
Well, from the ministry's point of view and from the government point of view, we have not seen that. where they are using purely Jamaican Creole in their ad campaigns. But definitely coming out of the University of the West Indies, the Jamaican language unit, and particularly the language planning classes, students have been given assignments and so on to translate these health campaign messages from the ministry into pure Jamaican Creole and to publish those on social media sites. So that's work being done on our part from the university, but not necessarily from the government. We're not seeing that.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much, Aquino, for a really, really fascinating glimpse into your work. Hope it all
You're
goes
welcome.
well from
Thank
now
you
on.
too.
Excellent. So, right, we are almost